The latest in strategic affairs, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the bell icon for updates.
Hello and welcome to StratNewsGlobal. I'm Surya Gangadharan. Xi versus Li, basically Xi Jinping versus his premier Li Keqiang. Is there a past struggle in the Chinese Communist Party? I have a small graphic to illustrate what I'm going to cover in the next 20 odd minutes. Is the Chinese Communist Party witnessing a past struggle between the president and his premier? The power struggle, if it is indeed happening, is taking place at a key time ahead of the party congress later this year, which could catapult Xi Jinping to an unprecedented third term. But Xi Jinping's handling of the economy or mishandling of the pandemic-driven economy may have given strength to Li Keqiang. The point here is, could Li Keqiang pull off an upset, ensuring his nominee succeeds Xi Jinping as president? So those are some of the issues we're going to cover with my guest this evening, Dr. Srikant Kondapalli of Jawaharlal Nehru University. He's been on our channel before and is a well-known China analyst and academic. Welcome, Srikant. Glad to have you.
Thank you.
My first question, how badly has the pandemic hit the Chinese economy? What's your reading?
This is really terrible news for China. They call this as once in a century change, meaning thereby that the coronavirus has hit the Chinese drastically. As you know, in November 2019, the first cases of novel coronavirus has emerged in China. And then on January 23rd, 2020, Wuhan was in lockdown. Since then, we have no news about what is exactly happening in China. Before January 23rd, 2020, according to the mayor of Wuhan, in a television interview, he stated that 5 million people have gone away from Wuhan, infecting the globe. And of course, we also had 2 students from Wuhan traveling to Kolkata from there to their home state, Kerala. So we also had this infection in India. Now, coming to China, the 5 million people who have gone, they have also gone within China and abroad, many of them to the Hubei provincial neighborhood, including in Shanghai, Chongqing, or other cities nearby, because of the high-speed railway train facilities and others. The virus was also transmitted in a high-speed manner. This has gone to various places in China. Of course, the lockdown did not really impact in terms of the spread of the virus, because the people have gone helter-skelter all across. Now, why I'm suggesting this is that last 2 months, you may have heard about the news that 400 million people are in lockdown in China, in 17 cities, big cities in the country. And this has resulted in the plummeting of the industrial production, the consumer price index, or others have drastically been affected. It is estimated that for every 1% decline in growth rate, there are 8 million unemployed in China, according to the estimates by Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, which is a Communist Party think tank in Beijing and in several provincial capitals. So cumulatively, you have 100 million unemployed in China because of this COVID, apart from the other disturbances that it had created, disruptions that it had created in supply chain management, in industrial production, in a host of other economic activities. People are locked down, so they cannot go into the factories or shops to be opened, and so that has created havoc all across. And the Chinese president had used what is generally called as dynamic zero COVID policy. What it means is that every time you want to go outside, you have to be tested once you step out of your house, and then while entering your house before. So 3 to 4 times you have to be tested, and there is an app which turns red. When it turns red, you had it. You will be taken away to a quarantine center. For 14 days, you are quarantined. If it is amber light or in green light, you're relatively safe, but you have to follow the same protocol tomorrow when you want to step outside. For those who are going from one city to the other, it is several times they have to be tested, and you have to pay for this. So the norm is that the first 5 days you have to be where you are when the lockdown has been announced, and the next 7 days, after 5 days, you have to be in an isolated quarantine. So it is said that food is supplied, but this is kind of stale food, as Beijing Winter Olympics athletes have complained as well when the Olympics were conducted, Winter Olympics were conducted in China. So this has been an all-round disaster so far for China.
So, what is driving this dynamic zero COVID? Is it science? Is it something else?
Well, the Chinese have argued, and there are some medical doctors like um, Chung Nanshan and others who suggested that immediate isolation is the only drinking hot water, and immediate isolation is the only uh, response to the COVID related matters. Of course, we have seen the Swedish uh, going to the other extreme by not having even mass social distancing or
Yeah.
sanitary measures. They have adopted the herd immunity concept, so which means that the antibodies will be developed within the human beings instead of having an external support system like the isolation or others. So we have an extreme other aspect, that is herd immunity compared to the zero COVID policies.
So is this ideological? I mean, it's not science because we've known from our own experience that lockdowns don't really help.
There is a lot of politics here because last year, June, China released a white paper on COVID 19, how they tackled. So basically, the Communist Party in China is suggesting that this is the only way, and they pointed at United States or even India or Europe, especially Italy, Spain, UK, France, and others, and suggested, see, look at these countries, they are following democracy, and they have not been able to tackle the virus. Look at the Communist Party of China. It was able to control, and we only have about 5,000 deaths and 120,000 infections. Although there is no transparency in these figures because the WHO two delegations have not been given any access to the drainage samples or blood samples of the infected people. And so the argument that we are transparent, we are open, we are most important effective, that flies into the wind because there is no second opinion about this. They have not allowed anyone. In fact, they have also arrested the whistleblowers, including Li Wenliang, the dentist who passed away facing the virus, and he was threatened by the Chinese police. So, in other words, all the media and others were all the People's Daily, the Xinhua News Agency, China Daily, or other newspapers in China. they never did any investigative journalism, nor have gone to Wuhan when the virus has spread in China at that point of time. So there is no second opinion on this. It is all propaganda so far. And for a people of 1.47 billion, they are suggesting 5,000 deaths and 1,20,000 infections. So this is a laughable thing. And basically, it means that many innocent Chinese are suffering.
So Premier Li Keqiang does not believe this policy is working. Is that why they are on opposite sides? Has he come out publicly against this, at least within party forum?
In the Chinese system, the premier is in charge of the health related or other aspects. Although there is a vice premier, Sun Chun Lan, she is 72 years old, a Politburo member. For women to reach the Politburo membership is also a major problem in China, despite all the talk about socialist feminism or other things. So Sun Chun Lan actually worked hard, but also with iron hand, which basically means that, for example, Xi'an has been closed down, shut down. It's about 17 million people, and many cases have been heard that a pregnant woman wanted to deliver has to go to the maternity ward, but then finally she could not go and she has to be the baby was aborted, and she has to face a lot of emotional turmoil. So since most of the hospitals are dedicated only for COVID and not for other medical help, so this case has happened in Xi'an. But there are also other cities where people have faced innumerable problems because of this hard approach on the COVID zero COVID policies. So mass testing, border control, restrictions on freedom of people, and most also important is the economic activity. So this has led to a huge problem within China on various fronts. So in terms of Li Keqiang, he is in charge of the overall governance related matters as the premier of the state council. Secondly, uh, after the SARS crisis in 2012, there was an emergency law that was passed in 2017. And with that, there is a provision that the premier is in charge of all these aspects, and hence Premier Li Keqiang had gone to Wuhan in the early stages of the outbreak of the virus. However, Xi Jinping was absent from public view in the initial stages, and only in April 2020, after the virus was tackled in Wuhan, that he made a visit to Wuhan. So it was Li Keqiang who was in charge of the whole of the coronavirus tackling, and his deputy Sun Chun Lan. So this is one aspect. The second aspect is the Li Keqiang is known to have supported the street vendor economy, which basically, as we live in India and we also understand, the hawkers all across that we witness in different cities in India. That is where much of the SMEs, small and medium enterprises, and most important, the employment generation, although it is underemployment, yet there is a lot of employment generated for the common people in China. However, Xi Jinping's philosophy is those skyscrapers, removal of all these street vendors in every city. These were seen as spreading the virus. These were also seen as creating the bad conditions on the streets with throwaway food and other materials, wastage materials. So there has been a contempt by Xi Jinping on the kind of activity that Li Keqiang supported. number one. Number two is Li Keqiang also said 2 years ago after the parliamentary session, 600 million people in China are living with $140 a month income. That's about roughly 9,000 rupees or so, which means that the the kind of affluence that we are seeing with $16 trillion GDP is all stashed away in only a few hands in China, and that resulted in Gini coefficient, that is the income inequalities between rural and urban areas. So Li Keqiang was trying to take a dig at Xi Jinping by saying that the China dream, China rejuvenation, and most important, last year Xi Jinping suggested that China had passed through a well-off society village, well-off society, meaning thereby they are roughly at the European standards of living. However, Li Keqiang's suggestion that 600 million people, almost half of the population, living at $140 is a major challenge that he had posed to Xi Jinping indirectly. There are also, of course, other differences. For instance, Xi Jinping in March 2018 had extended his own term as president and vice presidential post rather than the premier position of the state council. So there is also a personal conflict between Li Keqiang and Xi Jinping. Apart from the economic philosophy and others, there is also the suggestion that there are differences at other levels as well. In the recent times, Xi Jinping also tweaked some of the Politburo rules and regulations, and also the National People's Congress, their parliament sessions, by suggesting that he can sack any vice premier, because Li Keqiang's Communist Youth League uh, vice premier, Hu Chunhua, is supposed to be the sixth generation leader in 19 party Congress in 2017. However, he could not make it because Xi Jinping wanted to trust Chen Min'er, who has now become the Chongqing party secretary. So, in other words, this has created trouble between Communist Youth League and the Princeling faction headed by Xi Jinping, and also the new Keqiang army that Xi Jinping belongs to. In Keqiang province in Hangzhou, in Keqiang province there is a river called Keqiang. So the other side of the Keqiang river, those cadres who supported Xi Jinping when he was the party secretary in Keqiang province, they were called as the new Keqiang army. Not exactly the army, but a group of people to which Chen Min'er, Li Hongchang, and others belong to. So there is a tussle here between Communist Youth League headed by Li Keqiang and the Princeling oblique New Keqiang army faction headed by Xi Jinping. Uh, Although all these factions agree to the bottom line being reform program. How far they go in the reform program is the difference, and the approach at the tactical level is the difference between these factions. All of them follow Deng Xiaoping's reform program. Nevertheless, there are these differences also at the factional level.
So, how do these numbers stack up? Does Xi Jinping have numbers on his side within the party? Li Keqiang, is he posing a challenge? Are there divisions that are manifest?
There are 95 million Communist Party cadres. Uh, the rest of the population do not matter. The 1.47 billion people do not matter in China, except for probably tax paying or other aspects. So within the 95 million cadres, they will be electing 2,300 deputies to the 20th Party Congress this November. And the provinces there are 31 provinces in China, including cities like Chongqing, Beijing, Shanghai, and Tianjin. Uh, all of these have 1,577 members out of 2,300 members to the party congress. And PLA has 253 members. We should thank the Indian system. Indian military does not have any reservation in the parliament, neither in the Rajya Sabha or the Lok Sabha. But their counterparts in China have 253. That's more than 10% of the parliament representation. Samuel Huntington once mentioned that this is a Praetorian army, meaning the army controls the civilian side. Fortunately, we didn't had as we followed the Westminster model, we didn't had this military control over Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha. But nevertheless, in the Chinese system, they have 253, and the police have 53, roughly 50 members in the Congress, the Communist Party Congress. So they elect something like 300 odd central committee members. These central committee members elect 25 members Politburo. These 25 members Politburo elect 7 Politburo standing committee members who are supreme in China. The 7 members like Xi Jinping, Li Keqiang, Li Chanshu, Wang Yang, Chao Lachi, and others. These are the decision makers, topmost decision makers in China. So on your question, how these are stacked up, Communist Youth League is supposed to be having roughly about 15% influence among all these 2,300 odd deputies. On the other hand, much of the princelings, that is the sons and daughters, in India we have a similar dynastic politics. In China as well, the Communist Party cadre's son or a daughter becomes the next leader, like Xi Jinping himself, or others who have been born with a silver spoon, as they would say. So this is one level. The second level is there are 4,800 grassroots party committees who are most influential in selecting the candidates for the National Party Congress in November. And from these, they have to throw out people for the National Congress. So while the Communist Youth League of Li Keqiang is actually in a not exactly minority, but as I mentioned, roughly about 15%. Nevertheless, these provinces are the ones, nearly 76% of the Politburo members come from the provinces, which means this is where you find the Yogi Adityanaths, all the chief ministerial candidates like what we see in India. So these are the ones who are pushed up into the hierarchy in Politburo, and then some of them make it to the standing committee. And at least 5 vacancies are there out of 7 in the next November Congress. So it is anybody's guess, and it is actually like what we see many of the psephologists in India failing to exactly give the numbers of the state elections or national elections in India. Likewise, it is really hard for anyone to say who will become the next general secretary. So you mentioned a third term for Xi Jinping. That is a rumor. Of course, it has some substance, because last November 11th, there was the 6th plenary meeting in which they suggested that Xi Jinping will have because his name came up in the plenum several times, and secondly, he was raised to the the level of the third historical resolution after Mao and Deng Xiaoping. So a lot of people speculated that a fourth term or a life term. All rumors on.
I think we've having a glitch over there. Let's just see if this irons out in the next couple of seconds. Talking to Srikant Kondapalli on the past struggle within the Chinese Communist Party. Slight internet glitch there. Let's see if it irons out in the next couple of minutes. Hopefully it will. I have a few more minutes left before we wind up this discussion. So we're going to look at the last round of last question. Yeah, we lost it there slightly, Srikant, but just to, so right now, would you say that Xi Jinping's chances, given the fact that in May last month, apparently he was not mentioned as a core leader in the Politburo statements, does that suggest that there is some question marks about Xi Jinping's, ambitions going forward?
It is quite possible, but we exactly do not know how the system in China. The newspaper with the emerging leaders. For example, we have to see Li Hongchang, who was the Tianjin party secretary. If the day-to-day coverage of these people are high, Chen Minar, Hu Chunhua, or other leaders, the Shanghai party secretary Li Keqiang, who was of course under siege because of the Shanghai being under lockdown for 2 months. So we have to see in the press the coverage given to this. That is the only barometer we find. Second barometer we find to test who is emerging is the Peitai He swimming, where most of these party elders like Chiang Zemin, Hu Jintao, Zhang Qinghong, Chu Rongqi, Wen Jiabao, these party elders, they go for swimming in Peitai He. It's something like our Goa. So they go there, they have these confabulations for 15, 20 days, and then they toss up the next leader. And let me tell you, this is a very brutal process. Indian politics pale into insignificance with the kind of brutality that Chinese political cesspool can be. For instance, Xi Jinping had removed a Politburo standing committee member, Chow Yun-kang, as soon as he got into the saddle in 2012. And he had also sacked his own powerful rival, Po Xilai. Of course, Po Xilai is to be blamed for himself because his wife was involved in the murder of a British journalist. And so she is also in jail. The couple are in jail. And Xi Jinping was ruthless in removing what they call as tigers and flies. Tigers means big people like Chow Yun-kang, Po Xilai. Flies would mean a smaller, a party secretary of Hainan who was removed last month, or others on petty issues. So, so we have to see who is falling, who is rising through these barometers. First is if you look at their travel plans, and this data is available now, so we can gauge who is rising, who is falling in the party. However, there is a lot of uncertainty. No one is allowed closer to Peitaihe with the kind of, and so it's pretty hard to predict what could happen in November. But it is surprising that the May 5th Central Committee meeting did not mention Xi as the core of the leadership. This is really surprising.
So, last question. We have a question from Jayant Kashyap. Can you comment on the population decline in China? Estimate from is it around? In fact, would you like to
Yeah.
comment on this, Srikant?
Yes, there is a
Srikant,
demographic problem.
Srikant, can we just take a look at this question? I think it's far more relevant. The change in PRC's international behavior.
Yeah. Yeah, technically the party congress in November, there will be one paragraph on foreign policy. Much of the party congress is about personal changes, who will become Politburo member or standing committee member or central committee member. That is the focus of the party congress. Second focus is ideology. What kind of ideology that the new general secretary who takes over in November is planning to put forward. So last November, there was a committee formed for drafting the work report. And it is likely that the current Politburo standing committee member, Wang Huning, is part of this. In addition to the organizational department of the Communist Party members, this is the one which drafts the next General Secretary's work report, which will be presented to the Congress. Now, that contains a paragraph related to policy about your question. So in 2012, China Dream, China Rejuvenation, Community of Common Destiny, Belt and Road Initiative, these were announced in addition to intensifying multipolarity, etc. Now, we knew what the meaning of China Rejuvenation would mean later on. China Rejuvenation would mean whatever that the Chinese previously thought their lands were all occupied or grabbed concertedly by the PLA. So China Rejuvenation translated into Galwan. China Rejuvenation translated into South China Sea reefs occupation, or Senkaku Islands with Japan, they were being chased every day. Or it has also seen some Global Times journalists like Shen Chiwei suggesting Vladivostok belonged to that of China. So China Rejuvenation meant very high nationalistic rhetoric and also the military grabbing of territories belonging to the neighborhood. So that is what the impact on the neighborhood was. We have to see that one paragraph on foreign policy in November this year to understand what would be the direction, because the party congress puts up the agenda for the next 5 years that will be implemented. So every word that is written in the work report of the general secretary is crucial in understanding. As I just said, multipolarity intensifying. So they intensified SEO, BRICS, or other multilateral institutions. When they said BRI in 2012, Belt and Road Initiative, they have invested several $100 billion so far in the last 10 years. So that is the impact on foreign policy, because the BRI had an impact outside international behavior. And then there is also the concept of community of common destiny, which is something like a military alliance or a political partnership or somewhere in between. So, this is where China is pushing. And that is where you see 55 Islamic countries supporting China on Uyghur Islamic
Yeah.
issue in Xinjiang. So, very powerful. None of them said anything closer to the Indian position on Kashmir.
Yeah.
But you remember the Islamabad OIC meeting
Yeah.
had criticized India on Kashmir, all these Islamic countries. But when 1 million Uyghurs are incarcerated, none of these Islamic countries shouted on China. You see the power of money and the
Yeah.
power of the BRI in this sense.
So on that note, Srikant, I think we'll have to wind up. We're at the end of our time. So basically, what we are seeing is that it may not be smooth sailing for Xi Jinping going forward into the party congress in November. But frankly, we don't know. And a close reading of the Chinese media perhaps is required. So more strength to your arm, Srikant. Thanks very much. Glad to have you. And thank you again.
Thank you.
And for those of you who joined us, thank you for your comments and observations. We didn't have too much time to take on too many questions, but well, better luck next time. Do subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on social media. Thank you and good night.